Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm your host, Locke Hoover. As always, you can follow me on X at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on X. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. And today on the show, what 765 million buys you? If this will become a trend in college football, and the playoffs are set, and that's exactly where we begin today's show. And I would say there's so many flaws and so many issues with the playoff setup, how it currently is. And I think they only got two things right in this whole thing, in this whole bracket. That's one, being Georgia and Oregon being the top two seeds. Oregon, to me, without a doubt, I think is the best team right now. And then Georgia was one of the better teams, I think, based on the results of how everything played out. We'll get into them a little bit later. But off the jump, when the playoff committee made their final rankings, they were in the best two teams. Now for the many flaws. Boy, oh boy. Where do I start here? Let's start with this one. To me, no way in the world should Boise State gotten an automatic bid. Much less the 3 seed. To me, that 3 seed should have gone to Arizona State. Instead, the other 4. Arizona State still gets a bye, obviously, because they won the conference. And it really, after Arizona State won, the conversation became Boise, a 1-loss Boise team, or Clemson, with a 3-loss Clemson team. Obviously, I went with Boise because they looked at one thing, which we'll get to a little bit later as well. But Arizona State should have been the 3 seed without a doubt to me. Playing hot, playing well. 3 top 25 wins. Another flaw to me. Why do lower seeds have easier path than higher seeds? The 10 seed is Indiana. The 11 seed, SMU, to me have easier paths than the 8 and 9 seeds in Ohio State, the 8, Tennessee, the 9. If I'm SMU, my path to the semis is Penn State, Boise, then Georgia, which is scary, but we've seen them slow starts. And, oh, yeah, they don't have Carson Beck. Carson Beck's out. As the 11 seed, that's your path. That's pretty freaking easy. Same thing with Indiana. Indiana, you get Notre Dame, Boise, then Georgia. Much rather have that path, without a doubt. Tennessee, for example, has, as the number 9 seed, had one of the most talented teams in Ohio State. And then, the number 1 ranked team in the country, number 1 overall seed in the second round in Oregon. Why does the 9 seed have the harder route than the 10 seed or the 11 seed? Isn't it supposed to be easier the higher seed you are? That's what I thought seeding was all about. I mean, same thing for Ohio State. Same conversation. Ohio State gets Tennessee and then Oregon. That's a lot harder. That's a lot harder path as the 8 seed than the 10 seed in Indiana, who they killed, and SMU. A lot easier path to me for the 10, the 11 seeds. Make the same conversation for Oregon. Oregon gets an 8-9 matchup of Tennessee or Ohio State than potentially Texas or Arizona State as the number 1 seed. That's, to me, is a lot harder path for sure. I think some of that reason for this is the committee didn't want to make hard decisions. They didn't want to make hard, logical decisions that make sense. And here's what I mean by that. It's pretty clear they really only looked at one thing this entire time they were filling out their brackets. There's the win-loss record. That's it. That's the only thing they looked at. So Boise's ahead of Arizona State in the rankings and got the 3 seed instead of the 4 seed. Rather ahead of Clemson, which you can make an argument for Clemson, sure. Boise being ahead of Clemson, okay. But Arizona State, it's inexcusable. But why? Boise got 1 loss to Oregon. So, you know what? Cool. You enter your conference, you got 1 loss. I don't care what conference. Here's a bye. That's a flaw. Flawed system. And based on what the committee told us week after week after week, and in the final rankings, in the future, why should teams play big-time non-conference games? Since strength of schedule really doesn't matter, it's the win-loss column. Indiana, not a good football team. The one good team they played, they got hammered. And Ohio State. I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I don't think is that good. Notre Dame's always the paper tiger. You know, they have a good record. Play weak schedule. Step on the field, and usually Notre Dame does what they do in big games. Playoff games and going back to BCS games. Lose. They might get one in Indiana, but, you know, they had a pretty good path. Second question. I don't even know what question I'm on at this point. Why is Texas ranked ahead of Tennessee? Both have 2 losses now. Yes, Texas went to the SEC championship game, obviously. Committee told us if you go to the championship game, it's not going to affect you that much, or we don't have data points to rank the teams that didn't play. But you do have more information. Texas 2 losses, Tennessee 2 losses. They both lost to the exact same team. But know what? Tennessee's was on the road in Athens. Texas lost at home by a higher point margin than Tennessee, Georgia. And then, they lost to them on a neutral site against their backup quarterback in the second half. And they don't have a quality win or a top 25 win. Is that an issue? Of course not, because strength of schedule doesn't matter. Tennessee beat the 13th ranked Alabama, who was in the conversation of potentially getting in. They were up the debate for that 11th seed. Obviously, we know it ultimately went to SMU. We'll get to that a little bit later, too. Once again, I've got another question. Why is Ohio State seated behind Penn State? Ohio State beat Penn State on the road in Happy Valley by a good margin. They lost to Oregon in Oregon by less than Penn State lost to them on a neutral site game. Ohio State has 2 top 25 wins. Penn State, head-to-head in Indiana. Penn State's only top 25 win was Illinois. Yes, the Michigan loss, I know. I get it. But shouldn't that almost be discarded? Because Notre Dame lost to the worst team of all the teams in the field in Northern Illinois. That gets dismissed as Notre Dame gets to host a home game. They lost to them early instead of late. So that matters in the eyes of the committee. But the worst loss in the field in Northern Illinois. So if that one gets overlooked, why can't the Michigan loss get overlooked, beating Ohio State? Huh? Do you see the flaws, the problems? And then we get to the 11 seed. The Alabama SMU debate. I like the decision. SMU, I think, is the more deserving football team. Probably not as talented. I don't think they're as talented as Alabama. I mean, if you keep SMU as a one-loss, though, regular season team that had to play a conference championship game, comparing to Alabama, who has a stronger schedule than SMU. I mean, Alabama, like I said, stronger schedule, more quality wins over top 25 teams. But also they have worse losses. Inexcusable for Alabama. Lose to Vandy, lose to Oklahoma, 2 6-6 teams. That's your argument. That's case closed. That's it. Don't lose to either one of those teams. Maybe you lose to one of those teams, then you're in the Tennessee conversation. That's where you're at. But you lost to both. Case closed. But once again, it raises the question, why should you play a good non-conference team because a loss could affect if you get in or not? I mean, and I've seen it all. Yes, I understand those losses are in conference, Vandy and Oklahoma. Yes, I know they're in conference. But to me, the strength of schedule point remains. They went out and they killed Wisconsin, Big Ten school. Why go play big conference games when win-loss is all that matters, not the quality opponent that you beat out of conference? Since we're talking about in conference, based on what we've seen, based on what the committee told us, everyone's saying the SEC should, need to, and the SEC has explored going to a 9-game conference schedule. Why in the world would the SEC, especially after this year, go to a 9-game conference schedule based on what we saw, Alabama in the conversation, and then teams just cannibalizing each other with Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, well, kind of Texas. That is soft, easy schedule. But you got Ole Miss, SMU, Ole Miss, South Carolina, just beating each other up. Why does SEC want to add another one of those games? There's no point, and I don't see the SEC doing this, adding another game in conference anytime soon. Makes zero sense, and why? Especially after what the committee told us this year. Now, $765 million, huh? That blew me away. The money Juan Soto got for a guy who is not a great defender, has never won an MVP, and does not have a career average of over 300 or very many 100 RBI seasons. which is pretty incredible of how much of an overpay that was. Good player, of course. Absolutely. There's no denying it. He's good. Good player. But in the 7 seasons, only had 300 RBI seasons. Career, he's a career 285 average, 35 and 102. OPS, on base percentage of 421, slug 532. Good numbers, yeah. I don't think anyone's questioning that. I mean, it's not eye popping, it's good to me. But let's do a comparison here to Mike Trout. They're not even close. Mike Trout, through his age 26 season, beat Juan Soto in every single category under the sun, except for one. OBP, on base plus slugging. Soto had an OBP of 421 to Trout's, wait for it, 420. So that means all the categories: hits, average, runs, slugging, OPS, OPS plus, homers, RBIs, hits, WAR, games played, stolen bases, etc., etc., etc. Gold gloves. Trout, more of all of that and better numbers of all of that. Just to remind you, Trout got a 12-year, $426.5 million contract. 12 for 426.5. So to remind you, 15 years for 765. Yes, I understand the process. I do. Trout didn't go to free agency. He re-signed with the Angels. Soto went through free agency. It's a few years later. I know that. But to me, there's no way in the world the gap should be that wide. The gap should not be that wide and that big of a difference between Soto and Trout based on what they've done and what you projected them to do. Because you get, believe it or not, you get paid on what you've done, not what you're going to do. And that gap is incredible. And plus, also, too, how do you get more than Shohei Ohtani? That's mind-blowing to me, too. How do you get more than Shohei? Yes. And Soto can't even pitch, obviously. That to me is that. Yes, the years are different in the age, sure, but that's still mind-blowing to me. Now, where does that put him? With the Mets. I think the Mets are still the third right now. Yeah, we still got offseason. He's still offseason moves to make. I think they're still the third best team in the East. It doesn't put him over. He's not that one piece to put him over the top. Yeah, they might sign Pete Alonso. Still conversation. Who knows where he's going, what Alonso's doing. Might we sign him? All right, makes the lineup better. Pitching staff, I don't think is. I'm not worried about Mets pitching staff at all. Philly's still really good. The Braves are still really good. Mets are third best team right now. I mean, with this deal, I mean, you have to win multiple World Series or it doesn't look good. Especially knowing he's going to be a DH only sooner rather than later. And of course, most long-term deals never work out well. You hope and you want front-end production because you know the back years are going to be potentially rough. Example, Miguel Cabrera in Detroit, obviously, Albert Pujols in Anaheim. And then you've got deals like Anthony Rendon, who can't even stay healthy, can't even stay on the field. It's looked like one of the worst deals in all of baseball when he signed with the Angels. Yeah, a little bit older than Soto, but still, it doesn't affect the Mets. It doesn't matter. They've got the money to spend it. But as you say, as they say, you can only spend so much. You can only have one spot clogged up, and if it's going to be the DH and I'd say majority of his career, then spot's clogged. It's not the elite defender, the guy that can swipe bases, the steals, all that. To wait and see, but if history repeats itself, it's going to be like most of the other long-term deals. They turn out bad, but that's what happens, and it doesn't really affect the Mets at all. Now, something that has been really effective this year has been Chip Kelly. And is this a trend or is it a happenstance in college football right now and what Chip Kelly did? Obviously, he left UCLA last year as a head coach to be the OC at Ohio State. So he was there 6 years, finished 35-34, and only finished 1 year ranked in the final polls. His best year is 9-4. And here's where some of the struggles happened. I think I went the last 3 years, so 22, 23, 24, for Chip Kelly and the recruiting rankings. 22, he was 61st nationally, 9th in the conference. 23, 37th nationally, 6th in the conference. In 2024, a 90th nationally, last in the Big Ten, where he bailed on UCLA and only recruited 10 guys. So you have schools like Troy, UAB, South Alabama ahead of you. That tells you all you need to know. I mean, 2 out of the last 3 years, he didn't really recruit for him. And that's obviously a problem. That's obviously an issue. I think one of the reasons he wanted to be an OC again is he thought he might get fired, but now he can reestablish himself as being a good OC. And if another top college job opens, maybe he can jump to it. Because he was still a good OC at UCLA. So from 2020 to 2023, his offense points per game were in the top 23 out of those 4 years. Offensively ranked in 22 4th nationally, in 23 37th nationally, and 24 56th nationally. Good offense, still put up points, still scored, still was able to move the football and be a good offensive coordinator. I bring that all up to mention that Gus Malzahn left Central Florida to become the OC at Florida State. So in his 4 years at Central Florida, he was 28-24. He never ended the season ranked. 9-5 was his best year there, and that was in 2022. His last 2 years, 6-7, and then 4-8 this year. His recruiting rankings, once again, 2022, 52nd nationally, 23, 50th nationally, 9th in the conference, which is their first year in the Big 12. And then this year, 2024, 39th nationally, 3rd in the conference. So about the same numbers for him and the recruiting rankings. The 3 years there from 2022, 23, 24. Now, his offensive rankings still excellent. So 22, 16th in total offense, 31st in points per game at 32.9 per game. 23, 8th in total offense, 42nd in points per game at 31.3. 24, so this year, 16th in total offense, 47th in total points per game at 30.4 game. So you're getting 30 to 35 points per game from Gus Malzahn's offense. You can't win with that. You've got a problem on defense. And I think this will be a trend for great offensive-minded coaches that are head coaches that go on to become OCs at top programs. So obviously, program-wise, it's a jump. Ohio State's a better program than UCLA. Florida State's a better program than Central Florida. I think another thing too is with both of these guys, both Malzahn and Chip Kelly, less stress. You get paid $1 million plus to worry about one thing: offense. That's all you got to do. Recruiting is still the same, but it's less to extent, in my opinion, because you don't always have to go close. You can focus on a guy, you can focus on one side of the ball. You can focus on that receiver, that tight end, that running back, that quarterback. You don't have to worry about going to close a sales pitch on that defensive end. You don't have to worry about that. I think also this trend or this thing with both Malzahn and Chip Kelly, if you feel like you're going to get fired, it kind of extends your coaching life to continue to coach without having to sit out, be on the bench, and serve out your $10+ million buyout, which is never a bad thing if you're a coach. And you get to go to a larger program, Power 4 school with good offensive production. So opens you up for opportunity to potentially get a bigger job if he produces offensively at Florida State. And it's one of those, why wouldn't he? He's been able to produce offensively wherever he's gone, just figuring out the defense. So interesting thing that's happened. We've seen two happen the last, 2 years now of Power 4 coaches, good offensive minds going to better Power 4 programs as OCs. Something to watch. Is it just those two, or is it going to happen more? Obviously, wait and see thing. As always, you follow me on Twitter at Lock It Up Media. Lock It Up Media on Twitter. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports, E5280 Sports. You've been listening to Lock It Down Sports. I'm Locke Hoover. Talk to you next week.